You open your phone for literally no reason. You weren't bored. You weren't looking for anything specific. Something just pulled your hand toward it. And then 15 minutes later, you're watching a video about a disaster you didn't know existed, reading comment arguments between strangers you'll never meet. And you feel there's no other word for it. Worse. Your chest is a little tighter. Your brain feels like it's been dragged through wet sand. And yet your thumb is still moving, still scrolling, still looking for something you cannot name. And here's the part that should really bother you. You knew. You knew the whole time it was making you feel bad. And you did it anyway. Most people, when they hear that, assume it's a willpower problem. That if you were just more disciplined, more intentional, more present, you'd simply put the phone down. And that framing is not only wrong, it's actually making the problem worse. Because what's happening when you doom scroll isn't a failure of self-control. It's your brain doing something incredibly sophisticated, something it was built to do. And until you understand what that actually is, you're going to keep losing. Hey, I'm Martin. If you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe if this ends up making you feel uncomfortably seen, which it probably will. So here's what doom scrolling looks like from the outside. Someone who doom scrolls isn't obviously addicted to anything. They're functional, productive even. They have opinions about screen time. They've probably deleted social media apps at least once. But at night or during a quiet moment, or the second something slightly uncomfortable happens, the phone appears almost before the thought forms. And what they're consuming isn't even enjoyable. It's news about things going wrong. It's outrage. It's before and afters. It's comment sections. It's content that is specifically designed to produce a low hum of dread. And they are consuming it with the focus of someone studying for an exam. From the inside, it feels like restlessness that only the scroll can address. Like if you just keep looking, you'll find something. What? You don't know. Clarity, maybe? Relief. The thing that finally makes sense of the vague unease you've been carrying around all day. And here's what nobody tells you about that. You never find it. Every session ends the same way. Worse than you started. So what's actually happening? Let me give you the plain version first. Your brain is a threat detection machine. That's its primary job. Not happiness, not meaning, not creativity. Survival. And the way it handles that job is by constantly scanning for danger. Not just physical danger, but social danger, informational danger. Anything that could affect your standing, your safety, or the people you're connected to. Your brain considers all of that its jurisdiction. Now, for most of human history, the range of threats your brain needed to track was roughly the size of your village. Maybe 40, 60 people. A few local weather patterns, the behavior of animals nearby. That was the threat landscape. And your brain got very good at it. Psychologists call this negativity bias. The brain's tendency to weight bad news, threats, and losses far more heavily than good news or gains. Researchers at Ohio State University found that negative emotional stimuli produce significantly stronger neural activity than positive ones. And that's not a bug. That's exactly what kept your ancestors alive long enough to pass on their genes. The person who shrugged at a suspicious rustling in the bushes didn't survive to become your great-great-grandmother. The person who immediately catastrophized did. But here's where it gets really interesting. That same threat detection system that was calibrated for a 40-person village is now pointed at a feed with an infinite supply of the worst things happening to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And your brain treats every single one as potentially relevant to you. A flood in a country you've never visited, a policy debate you can't influence. A stranger's relationship drama, your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear, does not reliably distinguish between this is a threat to me specifically and this is a threat that exists somewhere in the world. It registers threat, it escalates your arousal, and then it wants more information. Because more information, historically, meant more safety. That's not a personality flaw. That's a nervous system running a survival script that's about 30,000 years out of date. And here's the hidden cost that nobody really wants to say out loud. It's not just that scrolling makes you feel bad in the moment. Research published in the journal Computers and Human Behavior found that passive social media consumption, the kind where you scroll without posting or connecting, is specifically linked to increased rates of anxiety and depression over time. Not just correlated, directionally linked. Because every session trains your brain to stay in a state of low-grade hypervigilance. You're not just watching bad news, you're rehearsing being in danger. Over and over in 20-second clips until your nervous system defaults to an elevated baseline. Until calm starts to feel like something's wrong. Until the scroll feels like the only thing that matches how your body already feels. Think about what that actually means for a second. You scroll because you feel anxious. The scroll makes you more anxious. And then you need to scroll more to manage the anxiety you just created. This isn't a habit loop. It's closer to what psychologist B.F. Skinner would recognize as a variable reward schedule. The same reinforcement pattern that makes slot machines so specifically destructive. You don't get a reward every time you pull the lever. You get it sometimes, unpredictably. And that intermittency is more compelling to the brain than a guaranteed reward every single time. The sometimes is the trap. And here's the identity trap. This is the part most people miss entirely, and it's the part I want you to sit with. After months or years of this pattern, people stop describing it as something they do and start describing it as something they are. I'm just someone who needs to stay informed. I have anxiety, this is how I manage it. I can't help it, I'm a worrier. The behavior gets absorbed into the self-concept. And once something feels like identity, trying to change it starts to feel like self-destruction. You're not fighting a habit anymore, you're fighting what you believe about yourself. That's a completely different problem. And it's also, and I want to be careful here, not your fault. Because your brain will always find a story that makes its behavior feel like character. Here's where most people go completely wrong. They try to use willpower, or they install an app that limits their screen time, which they then resent and override. Or they make a rule, no phone after 9 p.m., and they follow it for 4 days and then have a stressful Thursday and suddenly it's 11:30, and they've been in the Explore tab for an hour. The reason willpower doesn't work here isn't weakness, it's neuroscience. When you're in a state of threat arousal, which is the exact state that triggers the scroll, the prefrontal cortex, which is where your rational intentions live, is literally less active. Your ability to make a considered choice goes down precisely when you most need it. Trying to out-logic a threat response is like arguing with a fire alarm. Your body does not care that you know it's a drill. So what actually works? Two things, and neither of them are about restriction. The first is what researchers call a competing behavior protocol. But in plain English, it means your hands need to have somewhere else to go before the impulse hits. Not after, not during. Before. The moment of reaching for the phone when nothing specifically prompted it, that moment has a window of maybe 2 to 3 seconds before the behavior is already executing. The research on habit replacement, including work from Wendy Wood at USC, consistently shows that behavior change lives in environment design, not intention. Which means, what is your phone doing on your nightstand? What is your phone doing face up on your desk? The phone's physical location in your space is doing more psychological work than any amount of motivation ever will. The second thing is what I'd call discomfort tolerance training, which sounds clinical, but the application is almost embarrassingly simple. The next time you feel the pull toward the scroll, you wait. Not forever. 60 seconds. You let the feeling be there without immediately resolving it, because what you're actually training isn't willpower. You're teaching your nervous system that discomfort doesn't require emergency action, that the vague unease can exist and you can still be okay. That's the actual skill. And you build it the same way you build any physical capacity. Small exposures repeated. Not a retreat into pure discipline, but a gradually expanding tolerance for just being where you are. And here's the reframe I want to leave you with. Not a tip, not a summary, just a new way to see yourself. You are not a weak person with a phone problem. You are a highly sensitive threat detection system that got handed an infinitely stimulating threat feed with no off switch. Your brain did exactly what evolution trained it to do. The fact that it's now working against you in the modern environment isn't a character verdict, it's an engineering mismatch. And engineering problems have engineering solutions. You don't need to become a different person. You need to build a different environment for the person you already are. The one whose brain is just doing its job, a little too well in all the wrong places.